Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time of myths and legends, but we're going to do it at a snail's pace. We're going to a small island in the Aegean Sea, the kind of place where the only sound is the gentle lapping of waves on a sandy shore and the occasional cry of a gull. You're sitting on the soft, sun-warmed sand, leaning back against a weathered piece of driftwood, and you're watching the sky. The light is fading to a soft lavender and gold, a perfect backdrop for the quiet story of a god you might think you know. But you've probably never seen her like this. She's the goddess of the hunt, but before all that, she was just a very sleepy baby. You probably won't survive this story awake, and that's the whole point. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me what time it is where you are, and let's all get comfortable together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins on the small, rocky island of Delos. Delos, you should know, was not always a place of refuge. For a long, long time, it was just a floating, aimless patch of land in the middle of the sea. It drifted with the currents, a little lost, a little lonely. But the fates, as you know, have a funny way of making things happen, especially when a certain king of the gods is involved. See, Zeus, our ever-adventurous king, had a brief dalliance with a titaness named Leto. You can imagine how well his wife, Hera, took that news. Leto was soon carrying Zeus's children, but Hera, in a fit of divine jealousy, banned her from giving birth on any land under the sun. Leto, heavily pregnant with twins and exhausted from her endless wandering, was running out of options. She drifted and drifted and drifted, a tired mother-to-be with no place to rest. This is where Delos finally came to a stop. The island, tired of its own ceaseless wandering, offered itself as a sanctuary. It was a loophole, you see. Delos was just a floating island, not truly land under the sun. This detail that Delos was a moving, impermanent place was the single reason Leto was able to find a moment of peace. It's a tiny, forgotten detail, but it's a big deal. For 9 days and 9 nights, she was in labor, and it was a difficult labor, a fact that historians still argue about. Was it because of Hera's curse, or was it just a difficult twin pregnancy? Regardless, the world had to wait. The first baby to arrive was Artemis, born under the light of a serene moon. And in a surprising, but very Artemis-like turn of events, the moment she was born, this tiny infant immediately helped her mother, a newborn helping to deliver her twin brother. It's a very unusual and quirky tidbit, isn't it? As soon as she took her first breath, she knew what had to be done. It was as if her entire purpose, her destiny as a goddess of childbirth, was already fully formed in her tiny, perfect body. She was barely out of the womb, and she was already a midwife. She was quiet, of course, utterly still, but she was there, helping her mother through the final stages of a very long, very tiring ordeal. And then, finally, Apollo, the sun god, was born. One born under the quiet light of the moon, the other under the golden glow of the sun. They were, from the very beginning, a perfect balance of opposites. And so, on this small, once floating island, the two quietest and most powerful twins in all of Greece came into the world. You're still on that warm sand. The stars are out now, and the soft lapping of the waves is the only sound you hear. Delos is still, and so is our story. After their long, tiring birth, Leto was utterly exhausted. Can you blame her? Having twins is a lot, even when you're a titaness. She settled in for a long, quiet rest, and the two babies, Artemis and Apollo, were there with her. They weren't like other divine infants, wailing for attention or demanding ambrosia. No, they were preternaturally quiet, taking in their new world with wide, observant eyes. You can imagine the scene, a tiny, peaceful family on a sleepy island. The days were long and sun-drenched. The nights were cool and star-filled. It was a time of simple stillness. As they grew, slowly, quietly, something began to stir in little Artemis. She wasn't interested in the usual baby games. Her attention was drawn outward, to the natural world around her. She noticed the way the sea whispered against the rocks, the way a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of a nearby olive tree. It was all a symphony of soft sounds, and she was listening intently. It was during this time that she went to her father, Zeus, with a series of requests. She was still so young, a mere toddler by divine standards, but she was clear and direct. Her requests weren't for grand things like thrones or famous titles. They were for things that would allow her to be alone, to be herself. The first was for eternal virginity. She wanted to remain forever untouched by the chaos of mortal love and divine squabbles over marriage. It was a radical request, especially for a goddess of her status, but she knew what she wanted. It was a simple, elegant way to say, "I'm good, thanks." Her second request was for a hunting tunic, just a simple little thing to let her move freely through the woods. The third was for a bow and arrows, not for hunting, not yet, but for the pleasure of holding a finely crafted object. It was, in a way, a very early form of a saimar, just the weight and feel of a perfect tool in her hands. She also requested a whole pack of hunting hounds, not for a grand hunt, but just for the quiet companionship. Can you imagine? A little goddess sitting in the shade, surrounded by a dozen sleepy dogs. And her final, most interesting request? She asked for the mountains. Not to own them, not to rule over them, but simply to be their mistress. She wanted to be able to roam freely, to feel the cool rock under her bare feet, to know that the high peaks were her own quiet domain. There is an open scholarly debate on this point. Did she want to master the mountains, or did she simply want to be their humble caretaker, a silent presence in the vastness? Some scholars argue the latter, that her desire was for peace, not power. She also asked for 60 young ocean nymphs, the Oceanids, to be her attendants, and 20 river nymphs, the Amnesiades, to tend to her hunting boots and to feed her dogs. This is a quirky, fringe tidbit that often gets overlooked. She wasn't asking for an army, but for a quiet, gentle household, a collection of helpers who would be just as comfortable with stillness as she was. It's a detail that really says a lot about her personality, doesn't it? She wasn't building a court. She was building a home, a quiet home in the middle of a loud, boisterous world. And Zeus, surprisingly, didn't laugh. He looked at his tiny daughter, saw the serene determination in her eyes, and said yes to every single one of her requests. It was a rare moment of parental pride from the king of the gods, and it all happened very, very quietly. With her requests granted, a young Artemis began her long, unhurried walk to Olympus. You're walking with her now, feeling the soft, dusty earth beneath your bare feet. The path is not a busy one. It's not a grand, paved road filled with the chatter of other gods and heroes. No, it's a quiet, winding trail that meanders through fields of lavender and wild thyme. The only sounds are the buzzing of bees, the distant murmur of a stream, and the soft rustle of your tunic. This is a journey that, in a typical myth, would be rushed, a quick montage of a divine child growing up. But we're not rushing. We're taking our time. You stop to look at a small, shy lizard sunning itself on a rock. You watch as a family of quail scurry into the bush. Everything is gentle. Everything is slow. She wasn't being led on a triumphal march. There was no fanfare. She was just walking. And as you walk with her, you begin to notice things you might otherwise miss. The way the light filters through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. The way a spider has meticulously spun its web between two branches. This is the kind of detail that doesn't make it into the big, splashy myths. But for Artemis, it was everything. This quiet observation, This deep connection to the natural world was her first real lesson. She wasn't learning how to fight or how to rule. She was learning how to be still. As she got closer to Olympus, she could begin to hear the noise, the constant, boisterous sound of the other gods and goddesses. It was a cacophony of laughter, arguments, and grand pronouncements. It was the complete opposite of the peaceful silence she had grown up with. It was a lot to take in. It was a mainstream historical fact that Olympus was a very loud place. The gods were constantly bickering, plotting, and throwing lavish parties. You can just imagine the divine headache. And here was this quiet little goddess, walking into the middle of it all, a silent observer in a very loud room. A quirky fringe tidbit about this journey. Some minor, forgotten myths suggest that along the way, she met a very old, very sleepy river god who taught her a special way to walk, a way that made no sound, not even a whisper. He taught her to place her feet so gently, so mindfully, that it was as if she were a part of the air itself. It was a lesson in stealth, yes, but it was also a lesson in respect for the earth beneath her feet. She was learning to pass through the world without disturbing it, to be a ghost in the landscape. Historians still argue whether Zeus had already known what to expect from his daughter, or if he was genuinely surprised by her quiet demeanor. Was he just indulging her with those early requests? Or did he already see the powerful, independent goddess she would become? We can only speculate, but it's a fun thought to ponder as you continue to walk. As you finally reach the base of the great mountain, you can hear the faint echo of a thunderclap and the distant sound of music. But you don't feel intimidated. You feel ready. You've been trained in the art of stillness. You're not going to be another loud voice on Olympus. You're going to be a quiet force, and you're going to observe it all from a place of peace, just like Artemis. The journey is nearly over, and a whole new world of noisy gods awaits. But you're ready to face it, silently. Upon arriving at the gleaming marble halls of Olympus, you can feel the energy. It's a little overwhelming, isn't it? This isn't the tranquil world you just walked through. Here, every step echoes, every whisper seems to carry, and every god is vying for attention. We've gone from the soft, sun-warmed sand of Delos to a bustling, opulent city of gods, and you're here with a small, quiet, observant Artemis. She's not trying to make a big entrance. She's simply taking it all in, sizing up her new family from a peaceful, detached distance. You see her brother, Apollo, already holding court, a golden lyre in his hands, surrounded by fawning muses. He's the center of attention, a loud and brilliant star. But Artemis doesn't go to him. She stays on the outskirts of the crowd, a silent shadow. She watches the gods from a vantage point, maybe from behind a tall, serene column. You can almost feel her eyes scanning the room, taking in every gesture, every expression, every fleeting emotion. She sees the jealousy in Hera's eyes, the sternness in Zeus's posture, the swagger of Ares. It's a lot to process for a young goddess, but she doesn't flinch. She's not here to join the party. She's here to learn the lay of the land, to understand the subtle politics and loud personalities she's now a part of. This quiet observation is a key part of her character. While other gods are making a big show of things, Artemis is simply watching. This is a mainstream historical fact about her. Domain was often outside the typical Olympian drama, and it all started right here. She was a goddess of the wilds, and you can't be a master of the wilds if you're stuck in a noisy palace all day. It's like a person who loves being outdoors, but has to go to a very loud, very crowded office Christmas party. You just stand in the corner and try not to make eye contact with anyone, right? That's her, but for all of eternity. And here's a quirky fringe tidbit. Some very obscure myths claim that she had a favorite chair in the palace, a simple stone bench tucked away in a quiet corner of the gardens, far from the main hall. While the other gods were feasting and gossiping, she was there, just sitting, listening to the wind rustle through the divine olive trees. It was her quiet little space in the midst of all the divine noise. It was her way of separating herself, of maintaining her independence even while surrounded by her family. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about her desire for solitude. Historians still argue whether the other gods were intimidated by her silence, or if they simply didn't notice her at first. Was her quiet demeanor a sign of weakness to them, or was it a veiled form of power? We can't know for sure, but it's clear that her path was her own from the very beginning. She was choosing to be a god of the wilderness, not a god of the palace. She was choosing to be a quiet force, not a loud spectacle. And as you watch her stand there, so perfectly still, you know that her choice has been made. She will not be one of them. She will be herself. You take a slow, deep breath, and you feel the quiet settling back into your own bones. It's a much-needed calm in the middle of this very loud divine storm. Having quietly observed the boisterous gods of Olympus, Artemis had seen enough. She knew her path lay far from the gilded halls and loud clamor of her family. Her true home was not a mountain of marble, but the wild places of the world. So she began her journey back to the quiet. This is the part of her story that is so often forgotten, the part where a divine being chooses not power and pomp, but peace and simplicity. You're following her now, not on a grand hunt, but on a leisurely, unhurried walk through a gentle forest. The light is dappled and green, and the air smells of damp earth and pine. This is where the story of her first bow and arrow really begins. It wasn't given to her by her father as a symbol of power. She crafted her first one, or at least, that's what a very quiet and obscure fringe myth says. She found a perfectly straight, slender branch of ash, and with a small, sharp piece of flint, she whittled it down. She strung it with a single tough strand of sinew from an animal long past, a small sign of respect for the cycle of life. It wasn't a powerful, polished bow. It was just a humble tool. And with this bow, she didn't hunt. Not yet. She just practiced. You can picture the scene. A tiny goddess, maybe a little wobbly at first, pulling back the string. The twang of the bowstring is a soft, gentle sound in the quiet forest. She's not aiming at a deer or a boar. She's aiming at a fallen leaf, at a perfectly round pebble, at a knot on a tree. She's just learning the feel of the bow in her hands, learning to breathe, learning to be still, learning to wait. This wasn't a lesson in killing. It was a lesson in patience. The mainstream historical fact about Artemis is that she is the goddess of the hunt, but that's a very broad title. Before she was a huntress of animals, she was a hunter of peace. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. During this time, some say she had a pet bear, a very old and sleepy bear named Calypso, who would just lie at her feet and snore gently as she practiced. He wasn't a trained bear, wasn't a fighting bear. He was just a companion, a silent, furry testament to her love for all living things. It's a nice thought, isn't it? A young goddess, a peaceful bear, and a gentle forest. It's a far cry from the loud, dramatic stories we usually hear about the gods. This slow, deliberate practice is where her true power was born. Historians still argue whether her archery was a gift from birth, or if it was a skill she earned, day after day, in the quiet of the woods. Did her divine nature make her a perfect archer from the start, or did she have to work at it, just like a mortal? It's a wonderful thought that even a goddess had to put in the time and effort. It makes her feel a little more real. You're there with her now, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of the bow, and you know that you're witnessing the birth of a legend, not with a bang, but with a quiet, patient, methodical hum. With her bow and her quiet strength, Artemis began to gather her unique following. This wasn't a recruitment drive with loud trumpets and grand speeches. It was a slow, gentle assembly of kindred spirits. She wasn't looking for warriors or heroes. She was looking for companions who understood the language of silence, and she found them in the nymphs. You can almost feel the peaceful energy as they gather around her, a group of quiet beings who preferred the rustle of leaves to the din of conversation. She would find them one by one in the still moments of the day. A water nymph dozing beside a babbling brook, a forest nymph braiding flowers into her hair with infinite patience, and she wouldn't approach them with a loud greeting. She would simply sit nearby, a silent presence, and wait. And when they finally noticed her, they weren't intimidated. They were drawn to her stillness. It was a very gentle, very boring way to build an entourage, but it was perfect for her. The training she gave them wasn't for battle or for sport. It was for quiet living. She taught them to walk through the forest without snapping a single twig. She taught them to listen to the whispers of the wind, to understand the subtle language of the animals. She taught them to be perfectly still for hours at a time, to blend into the scenery. It's a mainstream historical fact that Artemis's nymphs were her constant companions, but the nature of their relationship is often overlooked. They weren't her servants. They were her students, learning the art of stillness. A quirky fringe tidbit about this time. Some minor myths suggest that the nymphs, in turn, taught Artemis things as well. A shy meadow nymph might have shown her a rare flower that only blooms at twilight. A river nymph might have taught her the secret song of the running water. Their relationship was a two-way street of peaceful learning. It wasn't about a master teaching her apprentices. It was about a group of gentle souls sharing knowledge in the quiet of the wilderness. Historians still argue whether Artemis chose these nymphs for their inherent quietness, or if she taught them to be that way. Was their peaceful nature a prerequisite for joining her? Or was it a result of their time with her? It's a classic chicken and egg scenario, and a fun one to ponder as you imagine this quiet little community living in harmony with nature. You can see them now, a group of peaceful, silent figures, moving like shadows through the woods, a testament to the fact that strength doesn't always have to be loud. The quietness you feel now is a direct result of their training, a feeling of deep, abiding peace that settles over you as you think of them. You've been with her on her long, slow journey. You've sat on the warm sand. You've walked through the gentle woods. You've watched her quietly observe her family. Now, we arrive at the final destination of her childhood, a boring, repetitive, and utterly peaceful daily routine. This is the part of her story that is not about grand feats or dramatic battles. It's about the simple, methodical repetition that forges a divine being. You're now living a day in her life, a day you'll likely find so gentle and so quiet that you won't make it to the end. Your morning begins not with the sound of a rooster crowing or an alarm clock. It begins with the soft, pale light of the moon still in the sky, a quiet kind of twilight before dawn. You rise not with a jolt, but with a slow stretch. The air is cool and smells of damp earth and dew. You might put on a simple tunic, maybe a little too big, and you grab a small, simple bowl of wild berries you picked the night before. No great feast, just a quiet, simple meal. It's a very humble, very human start to a god's day, and it's a testament to her connection to the earth. The first task of the day is a slow, quiet walk. You're not looking for anything. You're not going anywhere in particular. You're just walking, maybe with your quiet hunting hounds trotting silently beside you. This is when you would listen to the world waking up. A tiny cricket chirping its last song of the night, a single bird beginning its morning call. This is her way of taking the pulse of the world, of understanding the rhythm of life in the wilds. This is the central, mainstream historical fact about Artemis's routine. She was a goddess of the morning, of the pre-dawn light, of the liminal space between night and day. Now for a quirky fringe tidbit. Some stories say that during this morning walk, she would go and check on all the sleeping animals, especially the very young ones. She was a quiet shepherd of the forest, making sure a tiny fawn was nestled safely beside its mother. or that a family of rabbits was tucked securely in their burrow. It's a side of her that is so often forgotten, not just a huntress, but a protector, and a very gentle, quiet one at that. You would then go to a quiet, secluded place, and you would practice. Remember her quiet archery? You would do that now. But it wouldn't be just archery. You would practice being still. You would sit for an hour or more, perfectly motionless, just breathing, just watching. This is a practice that historians still argue about. Was her stillness a form of meditation, a way for her to center herself in a world of chaos? Or was it a practical skill, a way for her to become an invisible part of the landscape? We can never know for sure, but it's a beautiful thought either way. The rest of the day would be just as slow. A little nap in the shade of an old tree, a quiet visit to a gentle stream, a careful observation of the way a squirrel buries a nut. It's a day of small, quiet miracles. And as the sun sets, you would go back to your quiet, simple home, and you would watch the moon rise, the moon that was a part of her from the very beginning. Her day is over, and your journey with her is done. You're left in the quiet, with the soft rustle of leaves in the background, a feeling of peace in your heart. The sun is long gone now, replaced by that soft, serene moonlight. You're back on that quiet island, or in that silent forest, or maybe just in your own bed, and the echoes of her quiet life are fading now. They are settling into the background hum of your room. The sounds of the day have receded. The whispers of the past, the soft footsteps of a young goddess, are now just a gentle memory. You can feel the weight of your own body on the mattress. You can hear the quiet, even breaths of your own sleep. And that's all there is to do now. Just rest. There's nothing more to worry about, nothing more to learn, nothing more to do. Just stillness. Sweet dreams.